My name is Riley. I'm 34 years old and I work as a data engineer for a tech company in Boston. If anyone ever asks why I always keep a distance from my family, the answer doesn't lie in big explosions, but in the small, relentless accumulations from childhood to now. I'm the eldest. My younger sister is 3 years younger, but for as long as I can remember, she's worn an invisible crown labeled princess. And me? I was the one scrubbing floors, fixing leaky faucets, and being mature since the age of 8. My parents, Walter and Mary Ann, were the classic blue-collar kind. Dad was a supervisor at a shipyard in South Boston, and Mom worked as an internal accountant at a medical supply distributor. We weren't poor, but we certainly weren't comfortable. I learned to stretch every dollar, while Sienna got away with things in ways I couldn't explain. When I got a perfect score in math, my dad just nodded. When Sienna made the cheer squad, the whole family threw a backyard party. I learned to hide my achievements because if I got too excited, my mom would say, "Don't be boastful," and make Sienna feel bad. Sienna was never made to do chores. I did the dishes after dinner, called the utility company when the bill was wrong, and filled out every field on my FAFSA application alone. Meanwhile, Sienna sat on her bed, scrolling her phone, while our mom read each question out loud and typed for her. When I asked why things were so different, my mom replied, "You're strong. You'll figure it out. Sienna's more delicate." I can't count how many times I had to figure it out. They even turned that into a household phrase. When the oven broke on Thanksgiving, let Riley handle it. When Sienna lost her wallet at the mall, I was sent to find it. When I had pneumonia at 16 and still had to finish my final essay because no one took me to the doctor, no one in the house thought that was a problem. I never felt like my success was anything to be proud of. I graduated early, got into MIT on a full scholarship, worked in Manhattan for a few years, then moved back to Boston. Whenever I called to share good news, like a promotion or a raise, the only response I got was, "Oh, great, maybe you can help your sister with her tuition this semester." No one asked how I was doing or what plans I had. I was just the walking wallet. When I was 29, my dad had a work injury, not too serious, but enough to keep him out for almost 8 months. I sent home $3,000 each month to help with expenses. My mom didn't ask if I could afford it. She just said, "You understand the family needs you right now." At the time, I was saving up to buy my first condo in Cambridge. I put that dream on hold. For family? And Sienna? During that same time, she broke up with her boyfriend, dropped out mid-semester, and posted daily stories about getting her nails done, brunching, and rediscovering herself at overpriced cafes. I wired money while she lived like she had just won the lottery. Once, I called and gently asked if she could take a part-time job to help our parents. Sienna snapped. "Who do you think you are, bossing me around? I'm in recovery." And my mom cut in, her voice sharp with fury. "She's not strong like you. Why do you have to be so cold and calculating?" It said nothing, because if I said anything, I knew I'd be labeled ungrateful, the jealous sister. But deep down, something was finally starting to settle in me, clearer than it had ever been. I had been used for over a decade, financially and emotionally, and never once realized that family, when unchecked, can turn into a quiet kind of theft. I still remember that Friday night phone call vividly. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. It was my mother. Her voice trembled, though she tried to sound upbeat, the same forced cheer she always used when she was about to ask for money. "Riley, there's something about your sister's wedding. I think you probably already guessed." I paused, laid the gray t-shirt on the table, and took a deep breath. "Sienna's getting married." "Yes, this November. The groom's family wants to hold it at the Somerset Grand Hotel in Cape Cod. They know someone on the management team, so they've reserved the date. But I knew that but. I'd heard it for years. But they don't have enough budget, right? Actually, they're covering the dinner reception, but your dad and I can only contribute about 10,000. You know, Sienna wants a truly memorable wedding. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing." I couldn't tell if her voice was shaking from emotion or performance. It didn't matter. I asked, "What about Sienna? Is she planning to contribute?" My mom went silent for a few seconds, then quietly said, "She's focused on finding a job after her internship. Things aren't stable yet." That was the moment I should have said no. Told them that everyone should carry their own weight. But I did what people who've been taken advantage of often do. I clenched my teeth and agreed. I don't know why I said yes. Habit, maybe. A tiny hope of finally being appreciated. Or maybe I thought, just get it over with and cut them off. 3 weeks later, I wired $15,000 as a deposit for the venue. That was the beginning. Sienna called me one Sunday morning, excited about a wedding dress she had to have, a limited edition design from Paris, on sale for $9,800. You don't need to get me anything else, just help with this one. I found my dream dress. You wouldn't understand how that feels. I was standing in the middle of the grocery store with my shopping list in hand, listening to her talk like I was her personal sponsor. I don't remember what I said, but I do remember wiring another $10,000 the next day. The following month, it was the flowers, then the photographer, then the jazz band that James has loved since college. James, my sister's fiancé, lived in a luxury apartment in Back Bay, but according to Sienna, he was having some investment issues and didn't want to ask his parents for help because of pride. So I, someone who had never borrowed a dime from anyone, was now expected to fund a man's pride, whom I'd met less than 3 times. By early October, I had spent $86,300. I knew because I kept a detailed spreadsheet on Google Sheets, every column neatly labeled, from the $2,500 for invitations to the guest thank you gifts, which were custom candles with their names on the label. But what stunned me most wasn't the money. It was the attitude. One afternoon, I drove from Boston to my parents' house to join a planning meeting with Sienna and the event coordinator. When I arrived, I saw Sienna's and James's cars already parked. I stepped into the living room where everyone was mid-discussion. The coordinator looked up, a little startled. "Oh, hello." Before I could speak, Sienna cut in. "My sister, she's just dropping by." I stood there, locking eyes with James. He gave a faint smile, then looked away. No one acknowledged that I was the one who had signed their contracts. No one asked my opinion on the flowers, the appetizers, or the table layout. I stepped out to the porch, sat down, and opened my phone. I scrolled to the bottom of my expense sheet. The total read $91,420. I thought about the student loan that had taken me 8 years to pay off, the condo I hadn't bought yet, the solo trip to Scotland I'd postponed 3 years in a row. A text popped up from Mom. "Can you send $3,500 early for the dessert bar deposit? Thank you so much." No apology, no check-in, just, "Thank you so much." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I turned off the screen, and in my mind a question formed as clearly as if someone had spoken it aloud. If you vanished right now, would any of them even stop to look for you? I realized everything started to go off the rails on the day of the tasting event at Somerset Grand Hotel. At first, I wasn't even invited. Sienna had sent me a short text the night before. "Tomorrow I'm meeting with the kitchen team and James for the tasting. No need for you to come. I'll send pics later." No need for you to come. One cold sentence from someone I had poured nearly $100,000 into for her wedding. I still had the email confirmation for the catering contract, and the person who signed that contract was me. The next morning, I drove from Cambridge to Cape Cod without telling anyone. I wasn't going to cause a scene. I simply wanted to see what exactly I was paying for. As soon as I walked into the grand lobby, the manager recognized me immediately. "Miss Riley, welcome. They arrived about an hour ago. Let me take you in." I nodded, trying to keep a calm expression. The tasting room was on the 2nd floor. Frosted glass doors, inside was a long table set for 6, with cream linens, embossed menus, scented candles, and silver cutlery. Sienna sat in the center, wearing a plain white dress with softly curled hair. To her right was James, scrolling through his phone. To her left, my mother and a woman I didn't recognize, who I later learned was Fiona, James's mother. I stepped in. All four turned toward me. No one smiled. Sienna stood up, her voice a mix of surprise and tension. You? What are you doing here? I pulled out a chair and sat down next to the manager. I just wanted to see what I'm actually paying for. Is that okay? Fiona squinted at me like she was inspecting every inch of my tailored blazer. Riley, right? I heard you work in computers? Data. I do cloud infrastructure for a healthcare firm. Ah, so very busy, I suppose. The air froze. Sienna quickly chimed in. James's mom came to help with the selections. I didn't think you could make it. I didn't respond. I sat through the entire session, listening to debates over lobster versus steak, whether the cake should have 3 tiers or 4. Fiona dismissed most of the dishes I had previously approved in the budget spreadsheet, suggesting upgraded alternatives. It became very clear what was happening. I was the one funding the wedding, but they didn't want me there. They needed my wallet, not my presence. That night, when I got home, there were 2 new messages. One from my mom. You showing up today stressed Sienna out. Let her plan this her way. And one from Sienna. I know you mean well, but please don't make things more complicated. I just want that day to go smoothly. I didn't reply. 3 days later, I got an email from the wedding coordinator with the subject line, Update, official guest list change. I opened the attachment. My name wasn't on it. Not a mistake, not an oversight. I had been completely removed. I expected rage to surge up, but instead, a bone-deep coldness spread through me. I picked up my phone and called my mom. She answered after 3 rings. Why is my name not on the guest list? She sighed. Riley, everyone thinks you need a break. You've done too much already. And Fiona had some concerns about the recent tension. These concerns? They just want the wedding day to be peaceful without any drama. I laughed dryly. Though they removed the person funding the entire thing? Sienna just thought if you came, it might be awkward. You know how sensitive she is. She's under a lot of pressure right now. No, I don't know. But it sounds like you all have rehearsed this script perfectly. I hung up. 30 minutes later, a text came from Sienna. Longer than usual, but the gist of it was, I'm sorry, but I need the wedding to be about me, not tied to any drama. I hope you understand and respect my decision. I'll make it up to you. Make it up with what? A discounted wedding favor? A pre-written apology? I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the contract still open on my laptop. My name sat clearly on every page. Contract holder, payer, legal guarantor. And now, I was the one not invited to my own production, quite literally. I reopened my budget spreadsheet. The final number read $98,200. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel bad about the money. I just felt like I had been erased from a stage I built brick by brick. I didn't know who started the story, but by the time the rumors reached me, they had turned me into a version of myself I didn't even recognize. It was Wednesday morning. I was getting ready to present a healthcare data project at our internal company summit when my phone started buzzing non-stop. A text came in from Tara, my cousin, the only one in the family who ever spoke honestly. Are you okay? I just heard from Grandma that you had a nervous breakdown. Your mom said you suddenly canceled all the wedding stuff and disappeared. What's going on? I froze in front of the bathroom mirror at work. My heart was pounding, not from panic, but because I knew this was the next act in the performance they were staging. And I, someone erased from the wedding I funded, was now being labeled as unstable. I called my mother. She picked up immediately, almost as if she had been waiting. I know you'll be upset, but please don't make a big deal out of this. Everything's fragile right now. Sienna can't handle more stress. You told Grandma I had mental health issues? I only said you were going through a rough patch, more emotional than usual. You did cancel the wedding contracts without notice. Because I was kicked out of the wedding, remember? She was silent for a few seconds, then her voice dropped, laced with justification. Fiona spoke with Sienna. They're concerned about maintaining family harmony. James comes from a very traditional background. They value image and peace. I couldn't let you show up and create more tension. Or I laughed, not with humor. It was that dry, hollow kind of laugh from someone who just realized blood ties could be trampled for the sake of phony in-law diplomacy. So I'm the one disrupting stability after putting down nearly $100,000? And they, the ones who encouraged my sister to cut me out, are the picture of peace? Really, you're misunderstanding me. No, Mom, I understand perfectly. You chose their comfort over my dignity. You're more afraid of how outsiders view us than how your own daughter feels. You're being too sensitive. Everyone says you've been acting unpredictable lately. Everyone? Who exactly? Sienna and Godel. James mentioned it a few times. They're just concerned about you. Concerned enough to spread rumors I'm having a breakdown? I never used those words. But you let others use them. And you didn't correct them. Silence. I thought I'd feel lighter after confronting her. I didn't. I felt cold. A creeping coldness climbed from my spine to my neck, paralyzing me in that restroom, lit by the hum of a ceiling fan. The next day, I received an email from Fiona. Yes, Fiona Whitmore, the groom's mother, someone I barely knew beyond a few conversations about cake flavors and table linens. Subject line, a clarification request regarding Saturday. She wrote that, due to indications of erratic behavior, they had decided to limit the guest list to censure a safe and comfortable celebration for all. She understood that Riley had made a generous contribution, but hoped I would graciously understand the decision was made in the best interest of the event. And then came the final line that nearly made me throw my laptop across the room. We sincerely wish Ms. Riley a speedy recovery and peace of mind. Peace? Recovery? I wasn't sick. I didn't need sympathy. I needed justice. I forwarded the email to my personal attorney, a college friend now practicing in Cambridge. He called me back exactly 6 minutes later. Really, if you want to take this to court, I can help. No, I don't want to sue. I want to withdraw from everything. Every signature, every payment. I want out. Legally, by the book. But they don't get to walk away with my money and leave my dignity in the dirt. I spent the next 2 days combing through every clause in the wedding contracts, calling each vendor, reviewing cancellation windows, penalty fees, and whatever I could legally recover. The more I dug, the clearer it became. I wasn't just overlooked. I had been strategically used, then slandered. Never before had it been so clear. I was no longer part of this family. I was an image risk they were perfectly willing to discard in exchange for hollow compliments from strangers. I don't remember exactly how I felt when I first reopened all the wedding contracts, just that my hands had stopped shaking. There was no more anger, no more hoping someone would defend me. Only one thing remained: the determination to take back control. That evening, I sat in my small apartment in Cambridge, soft yellow light on, poured a glass of Cabernet, and opened my laptop. The screen lit up with dozens of folders: venue, Somerset; catering, coastal flavors; florist, the Bloom Yard; entertainment, Boston Swing, plus over 20 other vendors. Every one had attached contracts, invoices, receipts, and timelines. I hadn't missed a single detail. And now, I would use that same precision to cut it all off. I started with the venue, Somerset Grand. The contract allowed for a 30% refund if cancellation was made at least 72 hours in advance. The wedding was 5 days away. I called Kimberly, the event manager I'd worked with for 6 months. She picked up after just 2 rings. Really? Everything's still on track. I just reviewed the setup for the rehearsal. I took a deep breath. Kimberly, I need to cancel the contract immediately. A few seconds of silence. I'm so sorry. What happened? My family decided to cut me out of the wedding I paid for, and now I have no obligation to that event. As stated in Section 14.2 of the agreement, I am requesting a cancellation and partial refund for my deposit. Kimberly didn't ask more. Maybe she'd seen more family tragedies than I realized. I'll process it right away. I'm truly sorry to hear this. After Somerset, I called Coastal Flavors, the catering company we'd booked for a 5-course meal with signature cocktails. On the second attempt, Michael, the executive chef, picked up Riley. I've heard some rumors. I'm confirming that any contracts signed under my name are now void. I'm no longer responsible for payments. If the other party wants to proceed, they'll need to sign new contracts under their own name. Are you certain? More than ever. I repeated the process with every vendor: flowers, band, photographer, wedding car, invitations, decorations, the MC, even the artisanal cake vendor in Brookline. Some listened quietly, others expressed regret. Some responded with confirmation emails within minutes. A few came with penalties, but many vendors agreed to partial or full refunds due to serious and valid circumstances. I worked for 8 straight hours, pausing only once to reheat a bowl of miso soup, then went right back to the calls. By the time I sent the final email, a request to delete all materials from the wedding planning platform, it was nearly 1 a.m. The total amount I recovered, over $42,000, the rest wasn't refundable. I considered it the price of freedom. Not a cheap one, but worth it to cut ties with people who saw me only as a walking wallet. The next morning, I woke up later than usual. As I was making coffee, my phone buzzed. Caller ID, Sienna. I sat down and let it ring 5 times before answering. Are you insane? You canceled everything? I kept my voice calm, like I was in a business meeting. I canceled everything I paid for. If you or James still want a wedding, pay for it yourselves. James's mom is freaking out. They're calling everyone. You're ruining my whole life just because... What exactly? Because you erased me. Because Mom spread lies that I was unstable. Because I'm not a purse on legs, handing out money without question. Sienna went silent for a few seconds, then hissed through clenched teeth. Do you realize you just made me a laughingstock? You made yourself one. I just stepped away in time. She hung up without another word, but less than 10 minutes later, my mom called. I didn't answer. She called again, then a third time. By the fourth, I picked up and said just one sentence. If you're calling to defend Sienna, don't waste your breath. From now on, whoever signs the contract is the one who's responsible. I ended the call, turned off my phone, and poured myself another cup of coffee. I knew chaos was coming for them, but I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt light. For the first time in my life, I wasn't straining to play the reasonable daughter. I didn't attend the wedding, of course not, but the details still reached me, piece by piece, through people who couldn't stand the suffocating atmosphere that day. Sienna and James's wedding did happen in the end, but not at Somerset Grand. It was hastily moved to an old golf course on the outskirts of Norwood, where James's family had connections with the owner and could rent it last minute for a much lower price. No more upscale banquet halls, no more swing band, no more imported white roses from Ecuador. According to Tara, my cousin, who still attended because she was forced to drive Grandma, the mood at the wedding was as tense as a wire pulled too tight. She texted me on Sunday afternoon, just one day after the wedding. You didn't miss anything. Honestly, if you'd gone, you might have gotten an ovation. I called her immediately after reading the message. She answered while driving back to Worcester. Her voice carried a mix of anger and disbelief. Allie, I've never seen a wedding that dry. Everyone was whispering the entire time, like, is that true? What happened to Riley? But eventually, it became obvious. No one could replace you. I stayed quiet, just listening. The whole time, Sienna stood there awkwardly, face pale, either from lack of sleep or a bad makeup job. James kept disappearing, saying he had work calls, but I overheard him yelling at someone backstage. At one point, your mom was walking around the room telling guests you were overwhelmed with work and couldn't attend due to personal reasons. I let out a dry laugh. They really committed to the act. That's not all. The reception was a disaster. The food was basic, buffet. Chicken nuggets, fries, watered-down cocktails, no 3-tier cake. The bridesmaids had to change dresses last minute because the original ones were delivered in the wrong color, the event planner get this, was a friend of James's mom, totally unprofessional. Even the wedding slideshow froze mid-event with a font error. What about Fiona? Tara hissed. She just sat there, face like a stretched drum, clearly embarrassed that her dream wedding turned into a glorified PTA meeting. I overheard her whisper to someone, "If I'd known, I wouldn't have gotten involved." I didn't feel satisfied, but I felt balanced. Tara continued, her voice softening. But what really shocked me was after the ceremony, Sienna cried, right there in the parking lot. Your mom was patting her on the back, whispering something while James was off taking selfies with his friends like nothing happened. I didn't respond. I thought about Sienna in the wedding dress she once asked me to wire nearly $10,000 for. That dress might have been the only thing that still held the shape of a dream that had crumbled. That evening, social media flooded with wedding photos, but not one mentioned me. No words of thanks, no note that I was the one who laid the groundwork for that day, but I didn't need it. A few days later, I received an envelope, no return address. Inside was the original wedding invitation, printed weeks before, with a line that read, "Special thanks to our beloved sister for helping us make our dream come true." I looked at the printed words, stiff, bland. Then I folded the card and placed it in a drawer. Their dream was no longer my responsibility. That night, my mom called. I let it ring and silenced it. She called again, then texted, "No matter what, we're still family. Don't let this go too far." I didn't reply, because it had already gone too far. Not because of me, but because they chose that direction. I simply chose not to follow. 3 weeks after the wedding, I sat in the small office of Dr. Emily Clark, a therapist whose practice was on the third floor of an old building near Harvard Square. The couch was slightly sunken, the curtains were a soft gray, and the faint scent of chamomile tea hung in the air. I wasn't there because anyone told me to be. I came because I didn't want to become a version of myself who just kept answering my mother's calls like nothing had happened. During the first session, I sat silently for the first 10 minutes. Emily didn't rush me. She sat across from me, jotting down a few notes, occasionally nodding. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded like it came from someone else. I don't know who I am anymore if I'm not the educated maid of the family. Emily looked directly at me. No pity, no shock. Really, maybe it's time you start renaming your own roles. I laughed, a strange, crooked laugh. The next week, I set all family numbers to do not disturb, my mom, my dad, even Sienna. I didn't block them, just silenced the notifications. The messages came in like echoes from far away. "I think you just need some time. Can you please text me back? We're still blood, no matter what." I didn't respond. Instead, I spent my after-work hours walking around Fresh Pond, the same path I used to run as a student. I didn't force myself to feel positive. I just gave myself permission to pause. After a month of therapy, I began rewriting a few personal rules I had never dared to define. I don't owe anyone my silence just to keep them comfortable. I have the right to say no, without explanation. I am not a backup bank account for people who call me family, but never act like it. When my company opened enrollment for a tech women's mentorship group, I signed up without hesitation. Every Wednesday evening, I met with 4 other women in a small 6th-floor conference room. No one asked about my past. They only cared about what I was doing today and what I wanted for tomorrow. One night, I shared how I'd invested nearly $100,000 in my sister's wedding, only to be cut from the guest list. A woman named Janelle paused for a second, then said, "That's not a failure, that's tuition, expensive but worth it." I've never forgotten those words. I stopped sending money home. At first, it was because I had no reason to. Then it was because I started to understand no real love requires you to bleed financially just to prove your loyalty. I reorganized my apartment, changed all the bed sheets, sold the old couch Sienna once picked out for me, installed a big bookshelf by the window, and bought every book I'd wanted to read for the past 10 years, but never let myself buy. My new life wasn't glamorous. It wasn't filled with laughter. but it was calm, and that was something I had never known. During a therapy session, Emily asked, "If your mother called tomorrow saying she needed help paying a hospital bill, what would you do?" I thought for a moment and said, "I'd ask what happened to all the times I helped before, and if the answer was that was your duty, I'd end the call right there." Emily smiled and crossed off a note in her book. "Good, because you are not a duty, you are a person." I slowly learned how to honor my own presence in every decision. I declined the invitation to the family's Christmas dinner. Instead, I went hiking in Vermont with Janelle and two other friends. 3 days without cell service, no texts, no pressure. Just cold air, the sound of boots on snow, and the sense that I was in a place where no one expected anything from me except me. I wasn't trying to be optimistic, I was simply trying to be honest with myself. And that, for me, was enough to start again. On a Tuesday morning in early April, I received an ivory-colored envelope in the mailbox outside my door. There was no return address, only one line written in familiar handwriting. For Riley. I stood still for a few seconds before bringing it upstairs, placing it next to the still warm cup of coffee on my kitchen counter. I had trained myself not to react impulsively to anything involving Sienna, but this time I opened the letter. Inside was a handwritten note. No embellishments, no decorative paper, no staged tears. Really, I have no excuses left, only the truth. I hurt you. I chose comfort from outsiders over gratitude toward the one person who always stood by me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I still hope for a chance to make it right, not with words, but with actions. If you're willing, I'd like to invite you for coffee, not to explain, just to listen. Or, Sienna? I held the letter for a long time. No tears, no anger, just a strange sensation, as if I had seen someone standing from a distance, nodding quietly. 4 days later, I agreed to meet her. We chose a small cafe near Central Square, where the lighting was soft and golden and the espresso machine hummed steadily in the background. Sienna arrived early. She wore a simple gray sweater, no makeup, her hair tied neatly back, none of the heavily filtered Instagram images I used to see. When I walked in, she stood up, as if unsure whether a hug was allowed. I simply nodded and sat down. We ordered drinks. She asked for mint lemon tea. I got a black espresso. A minute passed in silence. Then she began. "James and I filed for divorce 2 months ago." I wasn't surprised. He lost patience quickly after the wedding. No more pretending. I tried to become what he wanted, but the more I forced it, the more I lost myself. I didn't interrupt. She continued. "I know what you went through. I know that the moment you canceled the wedding contract should have been my wake-up call. But I wasn't brave enough to face the truth then. I just kept protecting my image. At any cost, even if that cost was you." She looked up, her eyes red, but her voice steady. "I've started therapy at the same place you went. Emily Clark." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't mention you. I didn't use your name. But I began to realize that I've been living in an illusion fed by mom and society, that being loved, being provided for, meant I had worth." I leaned back in my chair. And now I want to create my own worth. I've enrolled in the education program at UMass Boston. I work part-time at a bookstore on weekends. No one there knows who I am, and I like that. She pulled a small slip of paper from her bag, a receipt for her first tuition payment, along with her first paycheck at minimum wage. Not to prove anything, just to show that I'm moving, not just talking. I looked at the paper and then set it down. For the first time in years, I saw an effort without a performance layer. I spoke slowly. "Sienna, I'm not promising we'll go back to being sisters the way we were, because the way we were was never fair to begin with." She nodded. "I know, and I'm not asking for that. But if you're truly changing through your actions, if what you're doing isn't just a phase of regret after failure, but the beginning of something long-term, I'll be watching." Silence. Then I added, "And if you stumble, don't ask for money, ask for time. I'm more willing to give that." Sienna smiled, not the old smile, the camera-ready one, a smaller, more honest smile, slightly trembling. As we left the cafe, she didn't ask to hug, didn't try to hold me back. She only said one thing: "Thank you for showing up, this time not to pay, but to be present." I walked away. Behind me, the soft chime of the cafe door rang. I didn't look back, but I knew, maybe, for the first time in our lives, we were walking in the same direction. Not crossing over, but moving forward in parallel. Riley's story is a powerful reminder that no one is born to be a backdrop in someone else's life, even if they call you family. In real life, some people will treat your kindness as an obligation and your silence as a nod of acceptance. But you always have the right to set new boundaries, to step back from the role of the fixer, and to walk off the stage when your presence is no longer respected. Healing doesn't mean forgiving right away. It means choosing to love yourself first. What do you think about Riley's choice? Would you have the courage to do the same in her place? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and self-worth.